Hello and welcome back to episode 6. Today we are going to be talking about interview prep and how you can put yourself in the best position during the interview to get to the next round. My name is Harrison and I'm joined by Drew. And today we're going to be covering the important things that you can do during the interview. So Drew, why don't you kick us off with some of the things that we were talking about before this, with the two-sided street of an interview?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in any interview, obviously, there's two ways to look at it. The number one, the company is going to be evaluating you, whether or not you have the technical skill set and are going to be a fit for their team. But on the flip side, it's a two-way street, right? You're also evaluating them as to, is this where I want to take my career? Do I see this as the next 3-4 years of my life? I'm working on this product, working on this team environment, this culture, everything of that nature is something that every interview you need to be thinking about. It really is a two-way street.
Yeah, 100%. And something that we've seen helps a lot with candidates is putting a little bit of work in before the interview to research the company, understand have they done any recent funding rounds, who are you going to be speaking to, and this is something that we help our candidates with when they're going into an interview, is providing them with the information, but doing that pre-work before you get to the interview to understand a little bit more about the company is going to help you ask much better questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's always going to be a certain set of questions that will always be asked in every interview, right? There's always going to be the tell me about yourself and being able to talk through, your career, what you've accomplished thus far. And so, you should always be prepared to have a concise answer to be able to highlight, your skill set, what you've done, the companies that you worked for, and the impact that you've been able to make for each of them. You really want to make that question, that answer should be no longer than 2 to 3 minutes max. I would argue even 1 to 2 minutes is really focusing on. That's the type of, you want to be able to give enough depth, but you don't want to make any answer just really long-winded and going on and on. Like the interviewer does not care. They just really want to understand what you've done and what you've accomplished.
Yeah, and I think on that, dialing in your story of why you are looking and why this is important to you is really critical. As you said, the interviewer doesn't want to hear a long-winded story, but if you have a concise and compelling story as to why you want this job, that's going to go a long way. Let's talk a lot about the different types of interviews. So you've got the initial interview, and then we got system design interviews. How do you think about preparing for these different interviews?
Yeah, so I think from a system design interview, there's tools out there that you can prepare for, so that you have experience using the whiteboard and drawing out kind of like how you would go about a specific project, right? They're going to probably give you a specific example, and they're going to say, how would you go about this? This is where you're also going to be asked about trade-offs and why you're making specific decisions, and it's really geared to kind of get inside your head, right, of understanding why you make the decisions. And certainly, even specifically now as Cursor, Claude Code, everything becomes more and more prevalent, they're looking at, okay, so what are the actual decisions that you are making, and what is your thought process to ensure that you're properly structuring the code, properly structuring a system that is going to scale.
Absolutely. Then just some other points that are not necessarily related to the way that you speak, but just little things that we've seen that make a difference is when you're actually in the interview, make sure that you've got good lighting, sit up straight, present yourself well, put some effort into the way you dress. All these little things can add up and make a difference between getting you over the line and not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think that, it comes down to that it's the tiny details, right, of preparing for how you're going to be, like making sure your camera is clean, making sure that you look sharp, making sure that you have rehearsed some answers of how you want to answer specific questions. And the other thing that I always think is, every interview, there's always going to be a time where they're going to say, what questions do you have for me? That is where, that is your opportunity to steer the conversation in the direction that you want to take it, right? And so, we have a great resource on our websites where, it's top 100 questions to ask in an interview, right? And it could be, there's a variety of different directions that you might want to go with it. Questions about the team, questions about the company, questions about the role, a variety of different directions that help you evaluate whether or not it's the right fit for you.
I think that is all that we have for today in terms of interviews. If you are interested in working with companies in the United States, definitely check out our website at Recruiter, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Take care.